Jack, let me come to you first. Russia and its logistics have been a nightmare. How has that changed, if at all, in the last 3 days or 4 days?
Well, I think, Vishnu, the Pentagon is still seeing some tactical shifts from the Russians. That 40-mile convoy that was bunched up to the north of Kyiv has now dispersed into urban areas and into tree lines. So the Russians are just basically trying to take cover, to live off the land to a degree, and basically not extend their logistical lines to the north, which has been a major problem. In the south, they've had a much easier time of it. The logistical lines from Crimea to Kherson, which they've taken, for instance, are much shorter, but that may be more difficult as they're trying to encircle Odessa in the coming weeks. If they do attempt an amphibious landing, as British and American officials do expect, it would just be very difficult to supply that force going further to the west, and perhaps if they try to make an encircling move on Kiev, even further up to the north.
Sim, what is the situation in Kiev presently?
So right now, Kiev, of course, has been under bombardment by artillery and by missile strikes. But on the ground, things are actually somewhat stable. To the western side of Kiev, the Ukrainian military has been able to hold the Russian offensive behind the Irpin River, which is a river that runs north to south, kind of along Kiev's flank. And on the other side, Russian forces have been trying to come closer to the capital, but each time they've tried so far, they have actually suffered significant losses in those offensives.
Glenn, Carl, similar question to what I was asking Shashank Joshi a few minutes back. Even if Putin physically wrests control of Kiev or some of the other big cities away from the Ukrainians, how is this, in a sense, almost a war that he's lost? Even if he gains territory, how is he going to physically hold those areas? Where are the numbers?
Well, the numbers don't seem to be there. The rule of thumb for an attack historically to succeed is you want 3 times the forces of those who are defending. They don't have that. They're roughly at parity in the size of the forces. Their tactics and training seem to be notably inferior to those of the Ukrainians and of NATO. The consistent refrain from the private soldiers that you hear speaking while in combat up to the more senior commanders and the intelligence analysts from the Western countries is the shocking low quality of the tactical units. However, they are brutal and they have a lot of remarkable equipment. And so for all of the heroism of the Ukrainians, I am quite apprehensive that simply mass will in the end tell. But how to hold it, there's another equation. You need the estimate of the American experts and military experts in Iraq was that we needed over 600,000 soldiers, as I recall, to control the country minimally. Mm-hmm. And we didn't have that. And Ukraine is substantially more armed, better trained, more mobilized, and larger. So the answer to your question seems to be there doesn't appear a happy way forward for the Russians. I think they can succeed in destroying cities, certainly, ultimately wearing down Ukrainians, absent the NATO involvement. But then you have what we have just heard, and what you have experienced firsthand, an utterly motivated and a population that will resist. Yeah. So I don't see a happy way forward, but we do have, tragically, many examples in history of occupying forces that are ruthless and can oppress people that are sullen and resist.
Yep.